Kevin Howse.
And this is our Capstone final project. Today we will be discussing name, image, and likeness in NCAA sports. So let's get to it.
So today joining us, we have Ryan Gurno. Ryan's worked for teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Sabres, and most recently has been with the PGA Tour. He's now the athletic director at Niagara, and his father attended Aquinas, so that's how he has the ties to Aquinas.
And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
It's a Monday, he's got a busy schedule. He's, taking time out of his day to help us out, so we really appreciate it.
And I certainly don't want to take too much credit. I am not the athletic director. I'm the assistant athletic director.
I have that
but
written
that's
down.
okay. That's okay.
It's all good. Still a very impressive.
Still appreciate that.
Sorry. Let's get right into it. So, first of all, we would like to explain just the concept of name, image, and likeness, just for anyone who, is unaware of the topic. So, would you like to get into that, Kevin?
Referred to as NIL, and that is when a college athlete can make money off their name, image, and likeness.
And it's something that has been a big debated topic in the NCAA for decades. It was always, it was never allowed, but just recently in 2021, it was finally allowed. And there's a lot of pros for it and cons against it. It's so debatable, and we're going to really go into, why we think it's necessary, but also the potential problems. So you want to move on to why exactly it needed to be addressed, and, thankfully it is now addressed.
So the most important thing that I think you could point at is that 86% of college athletes are living below the poverty line. Like, a lot of these athletes are struggling, and their families are struggling because the families, they don't have time to work second jobs, and their families are trying to support them, and it's obviously a sacrifice to send a kid to college, let alone have the kid be
it's a big commitment
committed to a sport.
For sure. And there's been certainly many instances that showed why the restrictions on NIL has been a problem over the year. One major argument against it is that people have they've tended to say that college athletes, they usually have like a full ride or some sort of scholarship to attend college and receive a college education, and that's enough compensation for not being able to make money off their name, image, and likeness. But as Kevin said, it's really an eye-opening statistic. Many college athletes do come from families that are low income, and it would be nice if they were able to profit off their name because of how much or how hard they're working, their performance, and whatever you would like to chime in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, I think the general misconception is that all these kids that you see playing football or basketball or whatever sport they're playing are all receiving full scholarships. When you look at Niagara specifically, because I work here, really the basketball teams all those kids are receiving full scholarships, so tuition, room and board, everything. There are plenty of student athletes at Niagara, at Ohio State, at USC, at all these other large and small schools that might just be receiving book money. And it's just a scholarship that's able to purchase your books for you. Not everyone's on a full ride. Each team has a certain number of scholarships they can have. If you have a team of 35 kids, maybe you only have 20 scholarships to divide up amongst those 35 players. So that's, I think, why we're sitting here talking today about a lot of these kids are below the poverty line because they're not getting a full ride. They're getting a partial scholarship, and them or their families have to foot the bill for the rest of the academic program that they're a part of. So being able to pay these kids through sponsorships and through name, image, likeness deals goes a long way for a lot of these families.
For sure.
Yeah. One example that I have is actually Maier, who played basketball for Illinois. He had to enter the draft prematurely. Like, for his development standpoint, it would have been better for him to stay another year.
For sure.
He admitted it. Other scouts admitted it. He didn't come out about why he went into the draft until years later, and it was actually his wife now who exposed it. Well, not exposed, but told everyone.
Brought it to light.
Yeah. It was his mother was sick and couldn't afford to see the doctors. He felt like him staying the extra year would have been so damaging to his mother to not receive the medication she needed. and that he needed to step up for his family and go to the NBA draft. Even if he was drafted later, his career could have been, on a harder start.
It's unfortunate because, that affected his career. I mean, he still...
He did end up, developing well.
He played many years in the NBA, but it's just unfortunate that at the time that he couldn't make money off
Some
of his
people,
NIL.
they know that they need to stay an extra year and develop more. There's more to their game than they're showing scouts right now.
Because he wasn't making any revenue, he
had to step up.
He had to go pro in order to, get some income in for his family and support his family. So that is one reason why, NIL is so crucial to college athletes, and I think it was the right move by the NCAA to finally allow it in 2021. But that being said, there also are some underlying problems that can come about now that it is allowed. So let's go ahead and touch on that. One thing is that potentially it can affect the integrity of NCAA sports negatively. And would you like to touch on why, Kevin?
I think the main thing is recruiting. Recruiting's going to take a huge hit with this. Recruiting's already been wild.
Yeah.
It's been chaotic for the last couple of years. Many coaches have
with the
said
transfer
that.
portal and such.
Yup, that's a whole other thing too. And like Saban says,
Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama.
the coach of Alabama football, very successful. I mean, really the face of college football, if you ask me. He said that at this point, it's not about where the players are being recruited for development, the coaching there, the facilities they have. It's going to be where can I make the most money and, where can I profit the most off my name, image, likeness.
Exactly, and that's just...
It's the integrity of the game.
And integrity, it damages it, and that's just not a good thing. And hopefully that can be sorted out. It's so new, it just got integrated into NCAA sports, so hopefully they can figure it out. I mean, we haven't seen too many instances where that's become a huge problem yet, but potentially down the line.
And guys, there are schools already that are developing NIL programs to help their current student athletes and future student athletes get sponsorship opportunities and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I certainly don't disagree that it is becoming kind of like the wild west. Like your big schools, like your Power 5 schools, those guys are going to even become more powerful because they're going to be able to give these girls and boys, men and women, more opportunity to be successful off the field, not only just on the field.
Right. Illinois actually started a whole NIL store where all the profits
awesome.
go right to the player.
That's like a great way to, resolve the potential problems it could cause, just implementing those programs right away. So I think that's a great thing that some colleges are doing. Because even the coach of Clemson, Dabo Swinney, Clemson and Alabama are two of the biggest football programs in the country. He said it's chaos right now. There's tampering galore. There's adults manipulating young men. Education is like the last thing right now. So potential problems can arise. But if programs are set in place early, as Ryan said, I think it can combat that, and then NIL can be a great thing for everyone involved. So
one other thing I'd also like to announce is there's going to be some segregation in this. There's going to be women make as much as men. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most likely not, unfortunately, just due to
how much they're seeing.
I mean, even compare different sports. If you got a football player at Alabama and then a tennis player at Alabama,
and then
obviously
you got even positions. And an offensive lineman who's working just as hard as the quarterback
or the receiver.
Yep.
Yeah, there's gonna be, unfortunately, the playing field's not gonna be fair for everyone due to just certain circumstances involved in sports, and that's just how it is. That's another potential problem.
Cameron March, who's a member on the women's golf team at Washington State University, she said, "I know this too well as a female of color currently playing women's golf, a sport that isn't the most lucrative or visible." And I mean, that's really going to be a huge problem. Is just where's the equality in all of this? Will they find equality in all of this?
Most likely. I mean, there could be ways for sure, but that's another potential problem with it. But I do think that this the NCAA and all the athletes are so much better off with the opportunity to create revenue off the NIL So that being said, there is Congress is working on trying to fine tune an exact regulation for NIL, because as of right now, this is really interesting. Congress allows states to hold their own guidelines and regulations for NIL. And even the NCAA president, Mark Emmert, said it is urgent that there's a uniform congressional bill, because a state-by-state approach can be so problematic, because if a state handles NIL in their own right differently, it may create unequal treatment for student athletes across the country, as well as unfair recruiting. So they gotta find a way to level the playing field for everyone.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Maryland is the #1 state right now, so that makes that really makes you question: would University of Maryland benefit the most? You know what I mean? As a state who has like the most easy or loosest or most profitable rules, will those colleges benefit more than states?
Paper, they most certainly could.
Which I think that has to be solved right away. I agree. Yeah. That's urgent. That is not the way you should go about this as far as equality. I mean, you're just gonna create a more chaotic, more like a more unbalanced recruiting process through that way, in my opinion.
And that being said, would you like to touch on? But do you have something?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say.
Sure, yeah.
I think that also. Coaches like to be in control, right?
Yeah.
And they like to be able to abide by the rules that every other team in their conference abides by. When you're dealing with Congress and the national and even local governments, like if you're competing not only against Dabo Swinney against Nick Saban, but then you're also competing from a South Carolina perspective versus an Alabama perspective in terms of states. That makes it uneven. That makes it tough because he's got to follow a different set of rules than Nick Saban does, than Ryan Day does, than Lane Kiffin does, than anybody. So it's
messy.
Yeah, it can be really messy and really difficult for those guys because Maryland might be the best place for NIL deals, and Ohio might be the worst place. So that's going to put Ohio State and those schools at a disadvantage potentially. And so, the Ryan Days of the world and those coaches are going to be competing not only against those other teams, but also the states that they're living in, essentially.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I think NIL it's so crucial and it's so necessary for the athletes, and it's introduced now, it's new, and now it's just got to be fine-tuned, to level the playing field. I think that's the approach that has got to be taken. So, yeah, Congress has multiple, what would we say, bills in place, potential bills to figure out, a unified regulation. Would you like to touch on that, Kevin?
So there's currently 3 bills that are being evaluated for NIL. There's one, do you remember, is it Goldilocks? Who's with the 3? One's okay, or one's too cold, one's too hot, one's perfect?
Yeah, I guess
it's kind of like that. That's what I think about it when I...
Yeah, Goldilocks. I like that.
Or Goldilocks, is that it?
Like
all right.
Something like that.
So that's exactly how I see it. I see it as one of the proposals is real strict. You got guidelines everywhere. I mean, it'd be really not that much of a difference in what's now. The other one, the loosest one is, those athletes have total freedom. They don't even have to follow their school's honor code, which I thought was,
it's a little
really, you got to be realistic. What do we want these guys promoting? We don't want them promoting inappropriate stuff that just doesn't follow what their college and university's trying to promote.
For sure.
And then you have the ones in the middle, or the one in the middle, the Amateur Athletes Protection and Compensation Act. This one, in my opinion, is the perfect one. It's right in the middle. It allows them to have NIL compensation rights, but also would have some restrictions and some guidelines to what they're promoting.
That's necessary for sure.
It would also, the Protection Act is also requiring the higher education institutions, the colleges, to provide additional protection for student athletes as far as if they get hurt, their stuff won't get pulled away, their scholarships and stuff. But it also just allows the guys to profit without going too chaotic as far as there's still restrictions. There's going to be restrictions needed.
For sure, yeah, of course. And I think that's the way to go. I like that bill because you want to give them some flexibility, but at the same time, there needs to be restrictions. I feel like everything needs to be documented. Like the athlete needs to work with the college to make sure, all the guidelines are being followed. So I kind of like that approach. Like the college gets to monitor them, but they can't put their hand in their endeavors and
Right. It's not too
them.
controlling.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. It also would allow the students to enter a professional sports draft as long as the athlete doesn't receive compensation from the league or an agent, and still hold their intercollegiate ability to play. I think that's necessary. I think that's always been kind of a debated topic for the last couple of years.
For sure.
And I like that they can, as long as, they're not making compensation, they're not getting paid, that they could still come back and hold the right to play.
So, I think my final opinion on NIL is, as I said before, I think it's great for the athletes, but it definitely is so new. It needs, some sort of, I wouldn't say restrictions, but just structure in place that, allows the athletes to profit off their name, but at the same time, they can't go crazy, because in the end, it's not about the money, it's about them playing. And they definitely should be able to profit off their name, but they should be more focusing, on playing the sport than making money.
I say sponsorships, merchandise, stuff like that shouldn't affect how you play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
that
that's where,
be on your mind.
but it will be. You know what I mean?
It's money. You want to make your bag. You want to make your money, of course.
It will inevitably be on people's mind. So it's about how do you limit it. Exactly. Really, it's about how you allow them to have their freedom, but it's not where every coach is stating what Davo Sweeney's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a Wild West. It's chaotic.
And I love that approach. So I think that is, my opinion on the matter.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? From a working at a university standpoint.
Yeah, right.
For sure.
Niagara has, of course, every school is going to have, their handful of kids that have, whether it's logo deals or national deals, whatever it is. But I think this bill that you guys are talking about, that's kind of in the middle and takes good and bad from each of the other bills. You need to have some type of guardrail on it, right?
Right, for sure.
You can't let the kids do whatever the student athletes do whatever they want. But this is the world we're in right now. They're going to go out and they're going to do what's best for them and their families. And us as universities and colleges, we just need to be able to, as you guys mentioned, monitor that and make sure they're doing right by themselves, but also right by the university, because the university is going to have their guidelines. And allow these kids to, make money or get, free stuff from these local or, regional type companies.
Exactly.
So it's going to be interesting. This came to fruition really quickly, and I think
for sure.
a lot of schools, some schools did it better than others in terms of getting the right information in their kids' hands, and it's a learning process for everybody. I think the big schools that have lots of money and can throw people and resources behind NIL is going to be really important. And I think a lot of schools are going to have to look at that or designate one or two people to help with that stuff, because even at Niagara, again, you're going to have your kids that are getting these opportunities because of how they play or because of their social media following or anything like that. So being able to have those guardrails in place, I think, will be important as this thing, because as we know, this thing is just going to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every year.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider behind it.
For sure.
That's the one thing that I'll say, while researching this, I didn't know the amount of angles, the amount of stuff that goes into this.
There is
I just thought, they just get paid. Whatever. Yeah. There's a lot of pros, there's a lot of cons, there's a lot of ways to look at it, there's a lot of, things that will affect underlying, underlying factors.
That's what makes it such an interesting topic to talk about. I mean, we've been going at it for almost 20 minutes now, which is crazy because I feel like I've just started. So, yeah. And now, before we end our segment, we just have a couple questions for our guest Ryan. So, first, how much has the incorporation of NIL and NCAA sports affected your occupation? Has it changed your job at all?
So That's a good question. So I'm more on the fundraising side, right? But I think the big thing for me is I'm out there talking to potential donors or alumni or whatnot. Like we have plenty of people plenty of donors that own their own business, right? And it's easy for them to come up and say, "Hey Ryan, like let's talk about Joe Smith on the men's ice hockey team. Does he want to do some social media posts or come sign some autographs for me, and I'll give him a free car, or I'll give him some type of monetary distribution for doing whatever he's doing." So yeah, I think that's obviously new to this position because again we've never really had to deal with something like that before. But yeah, I think from an athletic department standpoint, it changes a lot of things because and we talked about a little bit about how you need to put the manpower behind it and incorporate what these kids are trying to do into your daily like to-do list essentially. At the end of the day, like the coaches have to make sure that what these student athletes are doing isn't interfering with what they're trying to accomplish on the field, right? At the end of the day, they're student athletes. They're here to learn and they're here to play sports.
Yep.
They're not here to promote product A while they're out in the practice field or out in the game field.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping that like at the top of the list for everybody, I think, is obviously priority one. These kids all have different personalities, right? Like they're all willing to do whatever they want if it means that they're going to get something for free.
Yeah.
Which I don't have a problem with, obviously, but you're here to learn and you're here to play and hopefully win some championships and move the program higher and higher. So as long as the kids are keeping that in mind when they're going to practice or going to play games, I think that's going to be something that I think the conversation gets louder and louder about as time goes on.
For sure. And our second question is just quite frankly, what is your personal opinion on NIL?
Yeah, I think I've always been one to think that paying these kids is, I use paying loosely. I think being able to give kids the opportunity to earn dollars for themselves is important because I went to Ohio State for school and I went to all the football games and I saw the jerseys in the stands and like those guys on the field aren't getting any of that money back. Like it's all going to the university. And I understand because my wife was a student athlete in college. You're there to learn and you're there to participate in sports because we all see those NCAA commercials. Like 80% of kids that go to college don't play professional or whatever it is. And that's right. Like that's an accurate statement. Like the people that are playing tennis and playing volleyball and doing track and field and most of the guys playing football and basketball even like they're not going pro. Like they're not. Like they're going into the business world. Like those are our future leaders of tomorrow. Like just like you two guys. Like when you're going to college or going to the professional world. Like that's I think kind of what gets lost in all this because it is such a big monster that everyone's happy that these student athletes are going to be able to get paid for whatever they want to market themselves as. But at the same time, like the NCAA is built around the foundation of amateurism, right?
Yeah.
And obviously the NCAA is changing and it's going in a different direction than it's ever gone before. And I think that's great. Like people are realizing like, hey, this is the type of world that we're living in now. Like we're not living in the 1960s or 70s. Like the kids that are going into college, like you two guys are smart. They're thinking about themselves and thinking about their families and whatnot. And we need to be able to change too. So as long as it doesn't interfere with what you're trying to accomplish in the classroom and on the field, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. And I think the bills too that are in Congress, like that's going to go a long way in spearheading change, not only for the NCAA but for the universities and colleges and these kids and their families. So.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
That was a great answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think we're gonna wrap things up. So we gave you a little rundown of what NIL is. It's really such a debatable topic. There's so many, as Kevin said, there's so many angles and avenues to it that you have to kind of explore and figuring out, an opinion on NIL. Would you agree with that, Kevin?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's something that can be dissected all day long.
Yeah. There's a lot of analysis that goes behind it. And it's also something, as Ryan said, it happened it happened out of nowhere, drastically, 2021. They
it caught fire. It really did.
For sure. So I think that's something people overlook. And when you really, dig deep into it like we did, there's a lot of interesting things to, just ponder here. So that was the point of us doing this, and we hope you learned something, and we hope you formulated your own opinion on NIL. What do you like?
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you so much again for your time, Ryan. Your input was
Yeah.
I learned from you while
great.
filming
After
this, so.
hours of research, there's so much to learn.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
we're hoping you guys learn from this and are able to form your own opinion on NIL using, the information we taught you, and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.